Planning. Melbourne has just been again voted the world's most livable city, and I think we need to give Melbourne a round of applause. Now the challenge. How do we keep it that way? Let me ask you to think about this. It is possible to have a small village that is congested and dirty if that small village is planned and administered badly. Likewise, it is possible to have a large city which is clean and fluid if planned and administered well. The issue does not come down to population size. It comes down to your planning and administration. So where is the long-term vision for the planning and administration of this great city? The Committee for Melbourne is calling for a 50-year plan for Melbourne based on a logical analysis of where our population will be. Not necessarily a population figure that we would encourage or discourage, but a planning figure nevertheless. And there is a distinct difference between a population figure you'd encourage and one that you would plan for. Only when we have a proper planning figure can we plan the roads, the schools, the infrastructure that we need in a growing city. The Committee for Melbourne believes that our city's population growth will slow from 1.65%, which was our average over the last 50 years, to 1.4% over the next 50 years. But even this slowing growth rate will see Melbourne get to 8 million people in or about 2060. This number causes fear, and fear deters our political leaders from engaging in the long-term discourse. Making Melbourne more livable with 8 million people is possible, but only if we plan it, discuss it and bring the community on board. Only if we plan to make Melbourne better in the future, rather than hoping it will not grow, will we succeed in giving our children an even better city than that one given to us by our parents. And this is why we have in the past been quoted as saying that Dick Smith is one of the greatest threats to the future livability of Australian cities. We do so because we believe his calls distract public debate from one of planning on infrastructure, an issue we can 100% control, to issues of population control, which is something we can fine-tune at best. Logically speaking, where is it best to put our energy? Into an area we can control, or only an area that at best we can fine-tune? We do not believe Dick Smith has malicious intent. We just believe the debate is in the wrong place. We should plan for the population that we think we will have, and we should build the infrastructure that that population needs. But when did you last hear a politician give a 50-year view for Melbourne, like Menzies once did, like Whitlam once did? We remember Whitlam's Family Law Act, we remember Medicare, and by gosh, we remember the dismissal. But do we remember the building of sewers in the outer suburbs and the investment in infrastructure? Whilst we may think Dick Smith is wrong, though, we would not try to silence him because he helps to encourage debate while others are silent. But this debate should not be led by a retired businessman on one hand and the CEO of the Committee for Melbourne on the other. There should not be a vacuum for us to fill. This is a debate that should be led by our political leaders. But there is a spark of hope here in Melbourne. We have in our new Planning Minister, Matthew Guy, a man who says that the impacts of his decisions will not be felt in his time as Planning Minister, nor even in his term in government, but in 20 or 30 years. And if planning questions are debated and decided on that time frame, if they are, then we have some hope. We have in Greg Hunt, the federal MP, a man that has also proposed a vision of interconnected communities over the long period of time. But what does it say about our current discourse that a man can put a positive vision but get no coverage for that? Some of you may have read recently of the collapse of the Coburg Initiative, an amazing program put forward by the private sector. Grollo Equiset put a lot of work into that, and it was a vision about building and making that community better. But somehow that project was stifled by local politicians looking too narrowly. I have a vision, a 50-year vision for this city, a city which is more livable in the future than it is today. I have a vision of a city with a fully integrated public and private transport system. I would, for example, like us to remove Melbourne's rail level crossings. Why? We have 172. Sydney has 8 by way of comparison. But it's not a Melbourne-Sydney thing. We would all like more people to use public transport, and if our population grows, more people will have to. But if we put more trains on the network, the level crossings stay closed longer and the roads clog up. There is, in fact, a report that shows if we put enough trains on the Dandenong line to meet current demand, every level crossing would be closed for the entire morning and entire afternoon peak period. You don't need to be Einstein to figure out what that would do to the urban mobility. Melbourne is reaching a urban-wide, city-wide mobility crisis point. Yet it costs $100 million per level crossing separation. That's $17.2 billion to remove every one. That's an issue we need to discuss. But we only can if there is a long-term vision. I would like us to stop the unsustainable decreasing density in this city. Some people take a look at Docklands and say Melbourne's density is increasing, but the truth is the opposite. We had 23 people per hectare in this city in 1960, only 14 people per hectare today. We have the average highest footprint size in the world as we are decreasing the average number of people that live per house. Everything's going the wrong direction. And consider this, by 2025, 51% of households in Melbourne will be no-child households. That is, pre-child, post-child, or can't be bothered having children. Sorry, Dad, I'm not giving any grandkids. So why are we building so many family homes? This is a dialogue we need to have, but only if we have a logical discussion on where our population is likely to be. Only if we have a logical discussion about population growth and immigration. And who is leading this logical discussion today? Let me leave planning behind.